This is Dr. Z, Zachary Brooks, and I'm here with my friend Goodyear, and this is my podcast about bilingual decision making. Today I'm going to talk about a subject I chose for my dissertation. A dissertation is like doing homework for 2 years. It sounds like a bad decision. In some cases it is, because it certainly drives you crazy when you're doing this homework for 2 years. But in the end, I ended up with something I find super fascinating called bilingual decision making. So I'm recording this podcast from your favorite local library. It's an awesome place. Check it out sometime. So today I'm going to start geeking out about bilingual decision making and invite you to come with me and share your own thoughts about a topic I find fascinating, but even better, a topic that everyone can and does have an opinion on. The reason why is because almost all of us interact with people who come from different language and cultural backgrounds. And since we live in an interconnected world, we might as well do it very well. So once again, this is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with my friend Goodyear, talking about bilingual decision making. Topic 1, the baseball bat and the baseball. So let's do a quick summary of episode 3. This is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with Goodyear, my good friend from a local library near you. So remember, here's the problem we looked at last time. If a baseball and a bat, a baseball and a baseball bat cost $1.10 together, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, how much does the ball cost? Most people guess from the question that it is $1.10 minus $1, which equals 10 cents. So they usually guess 10 cents. It's a quick response and it seems to be correct, but it's not. What's the correct answer? The correct answer is 5 cents. Why? If we start with the information that the bat costs $1 more than the ball, then we can start with $1. If the bat is $1 and the ball is 10 cents, then the difference is 90 cents. That doesn't work. So what if the bat equals $1 1 cents? Well, $1 1 cents means the ball is 9 cents, then we have a 92-cent difference, and we continue. The bat is $1 2 cents, and the ball is 8 cents, then we have a 94-cent difference. And you get the idea. We work our way up, and eventually we get to the point where if the bat is $1 5 cents, and the ball is 5 cents, that equals $1.10, and it also means we have a difference of $1. And the strange thing about this little problem is that while it involves no complicated math, $1.05 plus 5 cents is not hard. This little problem is very tricky, and second language speakers tend to do a little bit better. Why? Well, often second language speakers are a little bit slower in processing the world and maybe even speaking. Think about a tenth of a second. They're a little bit slower than first language speakers, but this little bit of slowness can give them a better chance of answering the question correctly because they're using more of System 2, the slower, rule-based type of thinking. And if you're using more of a System 2 thinking, you're more ready to solve certain problems better. Topic 2, sudden exposure to a new language. This is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with my good friend Goodyear. So we are talking about the possibility of improving our decision making because of a new language, not despite of speaking a second language. So one way to study the effect of language on decision making is to study people who are suddenly exposed to a second language and a second language speaking environment, such as students in an exchange program, sometimes referred to as a study abroad program. So a researcher named Ersa Molu from Turkey investigated the performance of 40 students from Marmara University in Turkey while they were in an exchange program. Marmara is spelled M-A-R-M-A-R-A, Marmara. It's a nice little word. In other words, Malu, the investigator, wanted to know how Turkish students would do when spending time in other countries. So before the trip, 80% of the students, this is a survey, 80% of the students believed that the participation in the program would help their career prospects. After the trip, 85% of the students believed that participation in the program actually improved their decision-making skills and problem solving. So why would that be? There are sort of two explanations we can look at the students gave. One is probably obvious and the second is probably less obvious. So first, the students believed that having to use their second language gave them better social interaction skills and it made them more welcoming of diversity. This probably seems like a logical conclusion. If you have to use your new language to eat and you're receiving food from a stranger, you would probably have to improve your interaction skills to the point you are able to eat, and you probably are pretty happy with the person who just gave you the food, even if that person is a stranger. So, to my experience of traveling and using new languages, if you have to eat and you have to interact with a new stranger to eat, you improve certain skills extremely quickly because eating is very important, as you know. Well, back to the researcher. The second perceived benefit may be less obvious at first. So students gained a newfound respect not only for diversity and how their brains sort of process the world differently, but students now gained a newfound respect for their own culture and mentality. Why would that be? So to get our answer, let's look at the world of visual art. If you buy a black square canvas, if you buy a blank square canvas, you would be buying a canvas that has negative space. The second we begin to place our paint brush on the canvas, we are creating positive space. In other words, the subject of the painting, a person, a building, or a landscape, is the positive space because it is what the eye is drawn to visually, but it needs to have the negative space, the blank canvas, in order to stand out. Topic 3, positive and negative space. This is Dr. Z, Zachary Brooks, with my friend Goodyear. So in the last segment, we talked about positive and negative space in art and how it relates to how learning a new language in a new country can help you appreciate your country, your culture, and your language even more than before. So again, if we have a blank canvas, that blank space is called negative space. There's nothing there. The instant we put paint to that canvas, we now have positive space. And positive and negative space interact, and they both need each other. You don't have positive space without negative space. And so, there's an interaction visually between these two concepts. So how did we get to this point if we're supposed to be talking about bilingual decision making? So let's make some connections. Since positive and negative space are codependent on one another, like peanut butter and jelly sandwich for Americans, bean and cheese quesadillas are for Mexicans, rice and red pepper paste for Koreans, or fish and banana for the Portuguese, then appreciating your own culture and language means being exposed first to a new one. In English, much of our grammar is pretty straightforward, while our spelling is some of the most complex in the world. If you have to use a new language in a new country, suddenly grammar and spelling become very real concerns, and these ways of looking at the world with new sounds and pronouncing things forces our brains to adapt. Another way to think about this process is through an exercise principle called the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS, which has 3 phases: reaction, adaptation, and exhaustion. Our bodies like to remain at rest. In other words, we like to be lazy, which may explain our procrastination tendencies. This term is called homeostasis. When we begin to exercise and push our bodies beyond the comfort zones, our bodies react, then adapt, and when we overtrain, our bodies become exhausted. Learning a language is like exercise. We're comfortable until we have to use that new language to ask for food from a stranger. At first, it's hard to speak the new language, but eventually we adapt. When we get exhausted, we find a bed and we sleep. For the Turkish students who studied abroad and then returned home, they returned home with a greater appreciation for their culture, the mentality, and the language. They needed the other space, the other positive or negative space, depending on their views before the trip, to come back home to appreciate Turkey again. Positive space can't exist without negative space. They returned home having learned how to adapt to a new culture. Like athletes who train for competitions, the students had trained in an ambiguous environment and returned ready to interact with their first language and culture in new and dynamic ways. And we're back. This is Dr. Z. Zachary Brooks with my good friend Goodyear. So thanks for tuning in to the 4th podcast on bilingual decision making. Hopefully you appreciate how speaking another language can help you see the world in a whole new way and sometimes make decisions that vary. Subscribe next time to find out how biases interact with speaking a new language. In the meantime, happy deciding.